Detach. Control yourself. There is a war happening inside you right now. Not between you and another person. Not between you and your circumstances. Not between you and the world that sometimes feels designed to break you. The war is between the part of you that desperately needs things to be different than they are, and the part of you that is beginning to understand that the only thing you were ever truly meant to control was yourself. Most people lose this war every single day without ever realizing they are fighting it. They wake up already reactive, already bracing against what might go wrong, already rehearsing arguments in their mind that will never happen, already measuring their worth against what they have not yet achieved, already anxious about outcomes they cannot determine and opinions they cannot influence and futures they cannot see. And they call this living. But there is another way. There has always been another way. And the people who have discovered it, the ones who carry a stillness that the chaos of the world simply cannot touch, they are not lucky. They are not immune to pain or loss or disappointment or failure. They are not built differently than you. They have simply learned to detach. And in detaching, they have learned the most powerful thing a human being can learn: how to control themselves. That is what today is about. Not control over others, not control over outcomes, not the exhausting, impossible, life-consuming attempt to manage the unmanageable. Today is about the one domain where your authority is absolute. The one arena where every choice you make is entirely yours. The one investment that pays dividends in every relationship, every endeavor, every moment of your one finite life. Today is about mastering yourself. The illusion of control. From the time we are children, we are quietly taught a lie. The lie is this: if you do the right things, say the right words, be the right person, manage the right impressions, you can control how your life unfolds. You can control whether people love you. You can control whether you are chosen. You can control whether things go the way you need them to go. And so we spend decades, sometimes entire lifetimes, in the exhausting, soul-consuming pursuit of controlling what was never ours to control. We monitor the behavior of people we love, searching for signals that they might leave. We craft our words with surgical precision, trying to manage how we are perceived. We replay decisions obsessively, trying to retroactively control outcomes that have already been decided. We worry about futures that have not happened, trying to control variables that do not yet exist. We hold on to relationships, situations, and identities that have clearly run their course, because releasing them feels like losing control of the story we have been telling ourselves about who we are and what our life means. All of this is the illusion of control. And the price of maintaining this illusion is everything. Your peace, your presence, your energy, your joy, your ability to be fully alive in the only moment you were ever actually given, which is right now. The Stoics saw through this illusion with extraordinary clarity. Epictetus, who knew what it meant to have no control over his external circumstances, having been born into slavery, built his entire philosophy around a single, revolutionary distinction. There are things within our power, he said, and things not within our power. Within our power are our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, in short, whatever is our own doing. Not within our power are our bodies, our reputations, our positions of authority, our possessions, in short, whatever is not our own doing. Everything you have been suffering over belongs to the second category. Everything you have been neglecting belongs to the first. This is not resignation. This is not passivity. This is not an excuse to stop trying or stop caring or stop showing up fully in your life. It is the precise opposite. It is the recognition that your energy has been catastrophically misdirected, poured into the uncontrollable, while the controllable has been left largely unattended. What would happen if you redirected even a fraction of the energy you spend trying to control what you cannot and invested it instead in mastering what you can? The answer to that question is the entire point of everything that follows. What detachment actually means. When most people hear the word detachment, they picture coldness, indifference, a kind of emotional numbness that allows someone to move through life without being touched by it. They picture someone who does not love deeply, does not care genuinely, does not feel the full spectrum of what it means to be human. That is not detachment. That is avoidance dressed in philosophical clothing. And it is the opposite of what the Stoic tradition actually teaches. True detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the absence of dependency. It is the ability to love without needing the love to be returned in a specific way in order to remain whole. It is the ability to pursue a goal with complete commitment while simultaneously releasing attachment to a particular outcome. It is the ability to be fully present in a relationship, a conversation, a moment, without your sense of self, your peace, your worth, depending on how that moment resolves. Detachment is not distance. It is freedom. Think about what it would mean to love someone without needing them to behave in a certain way in order for you to feel okay. To pursue a dream without needing it to succeed on a specific timeline in order for you to feel worthy. To have a conversation without needing the other person to agree with you in order for you to feel validated. To face uncertainty without needing it to resolve in your favor in order for you to feel safe. That is the life that detachment makes possible. Not a life without connection or ambition or desire. A life where your connection, your ambition, your desire no longer has the power to hold your peace hostage. This is one of the most difficult things a human being can cultivate, because we are wired for attachment. Evolution built us to cling to the familiar, to the safe, to the certain, to the people and things that have historically meant survival. Detachment runs against the current of our deepest biological programming. But we are not just biological creatures. We are also conscious ones. We have the capacity, unique among all living things, to observe our own responses and choose differently. To notice the clinging and, with practice and patience and profound self-compassion, to gently, persistently release it. That practice is the work of a lifetime, and it begins with a single, honest question. What am I holding on to right now that is costing me my peace? The practice of letting go. Letting go is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in the entire landscape of personal development. It is talked about constantly and practiced almost never. Because real letting go, not the performance of letting go, not the Instagram caption about letting go, not the declaration that you have let go while your grip remains white-knuckled beneath the surface. Real letting go is one of the most demanding things a human being can do. It demands that you grieve what you wished would have been different. You cannot truly release something you have not honestly mourned. The relationship you wanted to work, the opportunity that did not come through, the version of a person you loved who no longer exists, the version of yourself you thought you would be by now. These losses are real. The grief they generate is real.
And bypassing that grief in the name of being positive or spiritually evolved or stoically detached is not letting go. It is suppression with better branding. Real letting go moves through the grief, not around it. It sits with the loss honestly, feels its full weight, and then, not immediately, not easily, but eventually, makes the conscious decision to stop carrying what can no longer be changed. It also demands that you release the identity attached to the thing you are letting go of. This is where most people get stuck without realizing it. It is not the situation itself they cannot release. It is the story about themselves that the situation has been supporting. The person who cannot let go of a failed relationship is often not clinging to the relationship. They are clinging to the version of themselves that existed within it. The person who cannot let go of a professional failure is often not attached to the outcome. They are attached to the identity of someone who succeeds, and releasing the failure means confronting the evidence that challenges that identity. When you understand that the self is not fixed, that identity is not something you have, but something you continuously construct through your choices and your stories, letting go becomes not a loss, but a liberation. You are not releasing part of yourself. You are creating space for a more authentic version of yourself to emerge. And finally, letting go demands repetition. It is not a single event. It is a daily practice. The thought about what should have been will return. The pull toward the old pattern will reassert itself. The impulse to check, to monitor, to control, to re-engage will arise again and again. Letting go means choosing again and again to redirect your attention back to what is yours, back to the present, back to your own response, back to the only moment in which your actual life is happening. Every time you make that choice, you become slightly freer, and freedom, accumulated over time, becomes the most extraordinary thing. A life that is genuinely, deeply, unshakably your own.
Controlling your thoughts. Your thoughts are not you. This is either the most liberating or the most disorienting thing you will hear today, depending on where you are in your journey. But it is the truth that every meaningful tradition of wisdom, Stoic, contemplative, psychological, converges on. Your thoughts are not you. They are events that occur within you, and you have more authority over them than you have been led to believe. Most people experience their thoughts as absolute reality. A thought appears, I am not good enough, this is going to go wrong, they do not actually care about me, I will never be able to change, and they treat it not as a thought, but as a fact. They build their emotional life around it. They make decisions based on it. They shape their entire understanding of themselves and their world according to the content of thoughts they never chose to have and never examined for accuracy. The Stoic practice of cognitive discipline begins with a single interruption. When a thought arises, particularly a thought that generates suffering, that contracts your sense of what is possible, that pulls you toward reaction or toward despair, you pause. You observe it. You hold it at a slight distance and ask, with genuine curiosity rather than judgment, is this actually true? And even if it is true, is dwelling on it serving me? This is not toxic positivity. This is not the instruction to think happy thoughts and pretend the difficult ones do not exist. It is the recognition that your mind, left unattended, will default to patterns that were formed by your history rather than your intention. Patterns shaped by old wounds, old fears, old stories about who you are and what you deserve and what is possible for you. And those patterns, unless examined and deliberately redirected,
will run your life without your conscious participation. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself in the private journal that became one of the most remarkable documents in human history, reminders to check his own thinking, constantly, repeatedly. He was the most powerful man in the Roman world, and he spent his private hours reminding himself not to be controlled by his own mind. Not because he was weak, but because he understood that mental discipline is not a destination. It is a daily practice, a daily returning to intentionality in a mind that will always tend, if left alone, toward whatever is most familiar. Your thoughts create your emotional state. Your emotional state shapes your behavior. Your behavior, repeated over time, becomes your character. And your character determines the quality and the direction of your life. Everything begins in the mind. And the mind, unlike almost everything else in your life, is genuinely yours to cultivate. Tend it. Train it. Examine what it produces with honesty and with courage, and redirect it gently and persistently toward what is true, what is useful, and what is aligned with the person you are intentionally choosing to become. Controlling your reactions. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom, your growth, your power, your dignity. And the entire quality of your life is determined by what you do in that space. This idea, simple to understand, extraordinarily difficult to live, is perhaps the most practically powerful insight that Stoic philosophy offers. Because the truth is that you will be provoked, you will be disappointed, you will be hurt, misunderstood, overlooked, criticized, and confronted with circumstances that bear no resemblance to what you planned or what you deserve. The world is not designed to accommodate your peace, and people, including the ones who love you most, will sometimes behave in ways that press directly on your most sensitive places. You cannot control any of that, but you can control the space between what happens and how you respond. And that control, that deliberate, practiced, disciplined use of the pause, is what separates the reactive life from the intentional one. The reactive life is exhausting. It is a life lived at the mercy of external triggers. A rude comment ruins the morning. A difficult email poisons the afternoon. An ambiguous text message sends the entire evening into anxious speculation. A small setback collapses the motivation that took weeks to build. In the reactive life, you are not the author of your experience. You are its victim, moved by forces you do not recognize as your own, expressing emotions you do not actually choose, creating results you do not actually want.
The intentional life looks completely different. In the intentional life, the rude comment is noticed, assessed, and released. The difficult email is read, considered, and responded to from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. The ambiguous text message is either addressed directly or set aside until the mind is steady enough to interpret it accurately. The small setback is seen for what it is, information, not condemnation, and the response is adjusted accordingly. This does not mean you feel nothing. It means you feel everything without being destroyed by it. There is a profound difference between experiencing an emotion and being consumed by it, between acknowledging anger and becoming it, between feeling fear and being ruled by it, between noticing disappointment and drowning in it. The Stoics called this the practice of the pause, the deliberate interruption of the automatic, the insertion of conscious choice into the space where unconscious reaction used to live. And like every practice,
it begins clumsily and becomes, with repetition, almost effortless. Start small. The next time someone says something that irritates you, pause before you speak. Take a breath, a real one, slow and deliberate, and ask yourself, what response will I be proud of? Not what response will feel satisfying in this moment. Not what response will win the argument or make the other person understand how wrong they are. What response will I be proud of when I look back on this moment? That question, asked consistently, will change your relationships, your reputation, your inner life, and ultimately, the entire trajectory of your life. Because your life is made of moments. And in each moment, you are either practicing reactivity or practicing mastery. There is no neutral ground. Practice mastery, one pause at a time. There is a version of emotional control that is deeply unhealthy. It is the version that says, do not feel, push it down, be strong. Do not let them see you affected. Perform composure while the interior life collapses. And this version, which is what many people think Stoicism teaches, creates not strength, but a pressure system. Everything suppressed beneath the surface continues to operate, shaping decisions and behavior and relationships from the shadows, emerging eventually in ways that are far more destructive than the honest expression of emotion ever would have been. That is not what we are talking about. That is not what the Stoics actually taught. What the Stoics taught, and what the best of modern psychology confirms, is that emotions are not the enemy of reason. They are information. They are the body and the psyche communicating something important about your values, your needs, your wounds, and your desires. Suppressing them does not make them less real. It makes them less visible to you while they continue to drive everything. Emotional mastery begins with emotional awareness, with the willingness to actually feel what you feel, to name it accurately, to sit with it without immediately trying to fix or escape it, to understand what it is telling you. This requires a kind of courage that our culture rarely celebrates. The courage to be present with your own interior experience, particularly when that experience is painful. From that place of honest awareness, choice becomes possible. You can feel the anger fully and choose not to express it destructively. You can feel the grief completely and choose to continue functioning anyway. You can feel the fear and choose to act in the direction it is pointing you away from. You can feel the longing and choose not to make decisions from it that you will later regret. This is not suppression. This is integration. The difference is that in suppression, the emotion is denied. In integration, the emotion is acknowledged, understood, and then consciously directed. It is given its honest weight without being given complete authority over your behavior. The person who has integrated their emotional life is not less alive than the person who is controlled by their emotions. They are more alive. Because they have access to the full range of what it means to be human, the grief and the joy, the fear and the courage, the longing and the peace, without any of it hijacking their capacity to choose who they want to be in response. Feel everything. Be controlled by nothing. That is the standard. Not always achievable, always worth pursuing.
Controlling your discipline. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is not the absence of pleasure or the rejection of rest or the grim, joyless performance of obligation. Discipline is simply this: the repeated choice to do what your future self will thank you for, even when your present self would prefer not to. It is the choice to get up when staying in bed is easier, to train when the motivation has evaporated,
to create when the inspiration has not arrived, to study when distraction is more immediately rewarding, to eat in a way that honors your health when indulgence is more immediately satisfying, to have the difficult conversation before it becomes an impossible one, to maintain the standard when no one is watching and the only accountability is the one you hold with yourself. Discipline, practiced consistently, does something extraordinary. It becomes identity. At first, it is a series of difficult choices made against the resistance of habit and comfort. But with repetition, with the daily, unglamorous, deeply personal act of showing up for yourself, even when you do not feel like it, it becomes simply who you are. The person who trains, the person who creates, the person who keeps their word, especially to themselves. The person who does the hard thing not because it is easy, but because they have decided that the hard thing is who they are. And that identity, built not through declarations but through actions, not through what you say about yourself, but through what you do when it is difficult, is the most solid foundation a life can be built on. Because it does not depend on circumstances. It does not depend on motivation, which is weather, present sometimes, absent others. It does not depend on how you feel this morning, or whether the conditions are favorable, or whether anyone is watching. It depends only on you, on the agreement you have made with yourself about who you are and how you show up. And that agreement, honored daily, becomes the most powerful force in your life. The Stoics called this living according to virtue. Not virtue in the moralistic, judgmental sense. Virtue in the original sense, from the Latin virtus, meaning excellence, strength, the fullest expression of human capacity. To live virtuously, in the Stoic sense, is to live as the fullest, most disciplined, most intentional version of yourself that you are capable of being. That is the life that discipline makes possible. Not a perfect life, a powerful one. Not a comfortable life, a meaningful one. Not an easy life, a life that is genuinely, deeply yours. Detachment from outcomes. One of the most liberating and simultaneously most counterintuitive practices in the Stoic tradition is the practice of detachment from outcomes. It sounds on the surface like an invitation to stop caring, to lower your ambition, to release your goals and drift passively through whatever life delivers. It is precisely the opposite. Detachment from outcomes does not mean you stop pursuing. It means you pursue with full commitment and zero attachment to a specific result. You do the work completely. You bring every skill, every effort, every ounce of discipline and creativity and persistence to what you are building. And then you release your grip on how it resolves. Not because results do not matter, but because your grip on the result is interfering with the quality of the effort that produces it. Think about the times in your life when you have been most creative, most effective, most genuinely powerful in your work or in your relationships. Almost certainly, those were times when you were absorbed in the doing rather than anxious about the outcome. When you were present in the process rather than monitoring it for evidence of whether you were going to succeed or fail. When the work itself was the point, not the result it might produce. That is detachment from outcomes in action. And it is not a passive state. It is the most active, most focused, most genuinely productive state a human being can inhabit. The archer, the Stoics used to say, does everything within their power, trains for years, perfects the technique, feels the wind, steadies the breath, takes careful aim, and then releases the arrow. What happens after the arrow leaves the bow is no longer within the archer's control. And the archer who cannot release, who grips too long, who second guesses at the moment of release, who is already anticipating the result before the action is complete, is the archer who misses. Release the arrow completely, fully, with all the commitment of someone who trained for years and all the peace of someone who knows that their worth is not determined by where it lands. That is the practice. That is the freedom. That is the power of genuine detachment from outcomes.
Living in the present. Everything we have discussed, detachment, letting go, emotional mastery, disciplined control of your thoughts and reactions, all of it converges on a single point. A single practice that is simultaneously the simplest and the most demanding thing a human being can attempt. The practice of being fully, completely, undividedly present in the only moment that is actually real. Not the past, which exists only in memory, a reconstruction that is inevitably filtered through your current emotional state, your current beliefs, your current needs. Not the future, which exists only in imagination, a projection that may or may not bear any resemblance to what actually arrives. The present, this moment, the only place where your actual life is happening, the only place where you can actually feel anything, decide anything, create anything, connect with anyone, or be anything at all. The Stoics spoke extensively about the practice of memento mori, the remembrance of mortality, not as a morbid exercise, but as the most powerful available antidote to the human tendency to sleepwalk through the present in pursuit of a future that keeps receding. When you hold the reality of your own mortality honestly, not as an abstraction, but as a genuine felt recognition that your time here is finite and that none of the moments being given to you are guaranteed, the present moment stops being something to get through on the way to somewhere more important. It becomes the most precious thing you possess. What would you do differently today if you genuinely understood that today was not guaranteed? Who would you call? What conversation would you stop avoiding? What would you create? What would you release? What would you say to the person who deserved to hear it? What would you finally, fully allow yourself to enjoy without guilt or distraction or the compulsive monitoring of what comes next? The present moment is where your power lives, not in the regret of what has passed or the anxiety of what might come. Here, now, this breath, this conversation, this choice, this extraordinary, ordinary, irreplaceable moment. Come back to it again and again, as many times as it takes. Because every time you return to the present, every time you pull your attention back from the past or the future and plant it firmly in the only ground where your actual life grows, you are practicing the highest form of self-mastery available to a human being. You are choosing to be alive, fully, deliberately, gratefully alive, in the only moment you were ever given to be. Everything we have walked through today points to a single truth that the greatest minds in human history have converged on across centuries and civilizations. The truth that the life you are seeking, the peace, the power, the freedom, the unshakable sense of yourself as someone capable of meeting whatever this life brings, is not found outside of you. It is built within you, one practice at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of detachment, one pause before reaction, one honest examination of a thought
one disciplined action taken in the absence of motivation at a time. Detachment is not giving up on life. It is giving up on the illusion that you can control what was never yours to control and redirecting that energy toward the one domain where your authority is complete and your investment is guaranteed to pay. Yourself, your mind, your responses, your discipline, your presence, your peace. These are yours, fully, completely, irrevocably yours. And no circumstance, no person, no failure, no loss, no external force of any kind can take them from you unless you surrender them. Do not surrender them. If what was spoken here today reached something in you that needed to be reached, if something landed in a place that has been waiting for exactly this, then do one thing right now. Subscribe to this channel. Every single week, content exactly like this will be here for you. Content that goes deep. Content that does not offer you shortcuts or empty affirmations or comfortable lies dressed as motivation. Content that treats you as what you are, a human being of extraordinary capacity who is capable of building something genuinely remarkable from the inside out. This community is for people who are done being carried by their reactions, who are ready to do the real work, who understand that the most important project of their lives is not what they are building in the world, but who they are becoming within themselves. Subscribe now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And come back, because the conversation we are building here is one that compounds over time, the way all real growth does. The mastery is yours. It has always been yours. Now go claim it.